the universe it's like oneness, but it's not sameness. So the universe, in order to experience itself, needs to differentiate itself in ways that allow it to have an experience. So me, you are not separate, but we're differentiated aspects of the same one thing so that the one thing can have an experience of itself. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
here, I just reside in the participation of that as part of the one thing.
We're
And it
all
sure seems separate,
falling and
but
we
it
need
sure
a
isn't.
place to hide. A safe place somewhere in the woods we can start a fire. And we all sit around the fire. We feel a little warmer now. And we all sit around
Jim,
the fire.
I've known you for quite a while.
We
Actually,
feel so
you're friends with my dad. You're friends with my dad. Um, sure, I don't know if you guys ever did anything in business together, but now you were in business for a while, for quite a while. I saw that you were CEO of some companies, and now you've become a conscious leadership coach. You found Qigong, and now you're advising CEOs and Fortune 500 companies. So, can you tell me a little bit about what a conscious leadership coach is?
Yeah, yeah, it's super fun to be here with you, Garrett. Uh, I've known you for your whole life, basically. I've known your dad since I think I was 16 or 17 years old. And yeah, it was super fun having kids at about the same age. My son Jack and my daughter Nova. So it's really fun to be here with you. Um, so, conscious leadership coach, what does that mean exactly? Uh, so, kind of like to break it down into two parts. Leadership is, we say, is like taking responsibility for the influence that we have. So it doesn't necessarily mean like in an organization or anything. Oh, that's where we spend most of our time at the Conscious Leadership Group, and where I spend most of my time coaching. But it's really just about focusing on the influence we have in the world, which everybody has. And then conscious means being here now, like being present, being in this present moment in a non-triggered, non-reactive way. So conscious leadership is being here now in a non-triggered, non-reactive way so that we can take responsibility for the influence we have in the world. So I help leaders and organizations with all different sorts of aspects of their life, how they're being in the world, the organizations they're building, so that they can take responsibility for those organizations and so they can become more present and move through their lives with greater clarity and greater inner stillness.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. So when I knew you, I've known you for a while, like we mentioned, and before you weren't into conscious stuff. You weren't into spirituality, as at least as far as I knew. So how did you get into that? Did you find something, someone introduced you to it, or were you going through some suffering maybe, or did you find
Mhm.
something on YouTube? People usually have different kind of stories. So how did you find that kind of stuff?
Yeah, suffering. So basically, yeah, like you mentioned, I'd led some companies in my past, and I was basically just a workaholic, an insecure, overachieving workaholic who was being successful by many measures, but internally was creating a lot of stress for myself. And if you'd have asked me back in, I don't know, 2013, 14, hey, how's it going? I would have said, oh, great, never better. But the truth was, and I wasn't even really fully aware of like how much stress I was under. The truth was, internally, I was not happy. I felt kind of stuck in the role that I was in. I had a rough relationship with my business partner at the time. Um, and summer of 2015, I found out I had cancer. The next day, I found out I had Lyme disease, and the next day after that, my left retina detached. And
Wow,
so,
that's crazy.
you know, you could say I had an awakening moment. The universe had been sending me signals, and then the signals got louder, and then finally they got loud enough that I listened. And within 6 months of that date, I had resigned from my role at the company that I was leading, and committing to taking a year off. And at the time, I was working with a coach. And so I was very fortunate. She's actually the founder of the Conscious Leadership Group, and that's where I now do my work. But at the time, you know, I planned on taking a year off and then going back to work. But over the course of that year off, I became a stay-at-home dad. I started practicing mindfulness, and I took a course on emotional intelligence. And that was really the beginning of me starting to open up to a whole new possible way of leading my life.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Yeah, it's interesting how those moments of suffering, in the moment, it's like, get me away from this. And, maybe it's a good thing, but also they sometimes lead to our biggest breakthroughs or realizations or awakenings. And there's so many people in the spiritual space who have suffered so much. And then out of that suffering, they have some realization, or they finally, something flips and then they're actually much happier than they ever even thought that could be possible. I wasn't so aware that you were getting into mindfulness and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, that kind of makes sense with the conscious coaching, but you did explain to me, and you actually showed me also some of your qigong practices. So
Hmm.
that's like a really powerful practice I've experienced. Even sometimes I'll go in the bathroom for a few minutes and I'll do this Zhan Zhuang practice where you kind of stand like a tree, and I feel like my
Hmm.
body kind of um, loosen, and it's really interesting. So maybe for people who aren't aware of what qigong is, maybe you can explain a little bit what that is and how you got into it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Um, yeah, I mean, Qigong is like an ancient practice for moving energy in the body, finding ways to move energy in the body. And there's like many different traditions. I don't know. I mean, there's so many different lineages of Qigong. And ultimately, some of them are focused on the organs, some of them are focused on health, some of them are focused on just moving energy through the joints. But ultimately, they're all about moving energy. And so, I mean, I highly recommend it. I recommend it to my clients. And for me, I found it through a coach. So I had a coach who was supporting me and being able to feel my feelings more and access my emotions so I could be a more intelligent, more emotionally intelligent person. And he was steadfastly encouraging me to find a Qigong teacher, start practicing Qigong, loosen up my body, have a more embodied experience of life. I was pretty stiff and pretty tight back in those days. And I think after the third call, where I returned and hadn't found a Qigong instructor, he went online, found one for me, and told me to go see her. So I started seeing this woman. I go every couple of weeks. She'd teach me, you know, three different Qigong sequences of moves and how the breathing goes along with them. We'd spend about an hour learning them. And then I would do those every day. And then I'd get three more. And so then I'd be doing the six in a row every day. And then I'd go get three more and I'd be doing the nine. And so after a period of time, I had a whole sequence of Qigong moves. Took me about 30 minutes each morning. And I had so many benefits come from it. Within, you know, 3 or 4 months, I would find myself laying in bed at night as I'm falling asleep, and I could feel like a vibratory hum running up and down my body, like
Oh
so
wow.
relaxed, so meditative. And I'd already been sort of getting into meditation. So this is Qigong. I found Qigong about 3 years after kind of my awakening event of cancer and all the things. And so it was really like an addition to what was already becoming a strong meditation and mindfulness practice that was really embodied. Another incredible benefit that I had was I play golf. Golf is one of the things I enjoy doing. And I would always have a sore back. I was always stretching. Sometimes after playing, I couldn't turn my neck because my back was sore. And after about a year of Qigong, that's all gone. I don't need to stretch. I don't need to warm up. I can just walk straight out, play afterwards. I don't feel sore. I mean, it's literally changed my life in so many ways.
Wow. So for anybody who's watching who has similar issues, I know like my dad also, he has problems with his back and can't play golf anymore. So for anybody who's watching who wants to play golf, but they have some back issues, that might be something that you can experiment with or try to
Hmm.
loosen up and allow the, as we would say, the free flow of energy so that, you can um, hopefully rejuvenate all those your back really in that situation particularly.
Yeah,
So
it's a cumulative effect of practicing it daily over an extended period of time. I still practice it to this day.
okay, cool. Learning qigong and getting into mindfulness and all these ideas, do you look at them from a kind of agnostic kind of point of view, or do you think that do you have some sort of worldview you develop, maybe some sort of spiritual worldview now, or do you look at things like from a, how do you view the world now that you discovered qigong and mindfulness and
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like, where does spirituality fit into the whole equation?
yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, uh, what I'd say is I'm really fascinated by the nature of reality. And it seems to me that reality is like kind of self-constructed, like we are the creators of our own reality, like how I experience myself vibrating in the world seems to be reflected back to me. So I always know that if there's something happening in my world that I don't like, I can look back internally and find how I'm participating in the creation of that. So I think this goes into the category of spirituality.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really interesting because, from like a Christian worldview, like spirituality seems very far away from an atheistic or agnostic kind of perspective. But from an Eastern standpoint, God, no God, or, it's really more about energy, right? And so when you're vibrating in a certain way, when you're vibrating higher or vibrating, in accordance with this thing or that thing, then it's more likely that those situations in your external environment are going to kind of line up with how you're feeling. Uh, Emotions are shared. When you walk
Mm,
into a room, you can feel the vibes. It's kind of like where that word vibration, you think of that word vibration, but it's very practical. You walk into a room and you really can feel the vibes. It's why people say that. So
yeah,
yeah, so it's very
I agree.
interesting how you can shift that vibe with your qigong or with your mindfulness practice.
Hmm. Yeah, I believe that. And through this, sort of conscious coaching, becoming self-aware is really a practice of, and this is, I think, in the depth of what I would call my own spiritual practice, is, like, what are all the behavioral patterns that kind of run automatically to have me moving through the world that I don't fully see clearly how those have some shadows to them. Like I mentioned earlier, I was kind of a workaholic overachiever. Uh, in some regards, it's good to be able to accomplish a lot and have a capacity to do a lot, to hold a lot of things at once and run a company. There's a high side to that. And the shadow side, at least the way I was doing it, was that I was ignoring my own body and my own health.
Mm.
And so for me, it's like, what are all the ways that I want to be most fully and authentically expressed in the world? And can I continuously wake up to all the shadow parts of me that come along with that so that I can clear those and just become a clearer and clearer transmission um, over time?
So for somebody who's maybe a CEO right now looking into maybe conscious coaching, or looking into becoming, developing more of a spiritual side or a mindful side, or maybe getting into Qigong, or, what are some for someone who's just getting into all this stuff, what would you recommend to somebody? What's something that you tell maybe your clients, maybe on the first call, that you think is the most
Mhm.
valuable kind of piece of advice that you give them?
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, so like when prospective clients call and they want to learn a little bit more about the kind of coaching that we're doing, um, we like to break it down. We make a distinction. We like to break it down between content and context. And so what I would say is that our lives are filled with content. So for a business leader, the content could be, we didn't make our projected profit numbers last quarter. Somebody just quit. For all of us, my partner just gave me that look. I didn't get enough chicken on my chicken salad at lunch, right? There's all these things that are happening in our life. That's the content of our life, all the stuff that's happening. So this is the content. And our context is, how am I being with the content? How am I being with it? Am I being with it from open curiosity, or am I being with it from some reactivity? Did I get triggered? Did I go a little bit into a narrow story about the person's intentions or what this means for my future? Did I scare myself? We as mammals are always scanning the environment for threats. And as social creatures, one of those threats is a threat to our approval. Another one's a threat to our control. Another one's a threat to our security. So we're always just scanning the environment for these threats. And when we find one of them, we contract. So conscious leadership coaching is really about exploring those moments of contraction, finding, what is it about me? How did I get organized? My personality, all my experiences, how I got to where I am today, have all led me to this moment where this piece of content in my life is creating some reactivity in this nervous system. And can I find out more about myself that way? And when I do, I find what we call these blind spots. I find, how I'm being in reactivity, and then I have more choice. And over time, the things that created the reactivity go down. And I find myself more reliably being in an open, curious posture, not in resistance to life, not in automatic, I don't like energy. And then the
So,
thesis goes, you'll be a better leader.
mm, yeah, and so when I was hearing you say all of that, I was thinking like, yes, 100%, 100%. But then I was thinking about my dad watching this, and I feel like he would be thinking, okay, yeah, that's great, but it doesn't matter. None of that matters to me. I'm just focused on the business and what I'm doing. So I guess the next question is, why is that? Maybe you can, I think you maybe hinted on it a little bit, but why is that important for a CEO, who's just focused on the business, who maybe would think that this stuff is not going to impact anything, that it's just about working hard and so how
Mhm.
can this help?
Well, let's tie it back to this idea of vibes and vibration. So the idea here is, the more I unpack and learn about my own reactive patterns, the more I'll vibrate at a higher and higher frequency. The more I vibrate at a high frequency, the more likely it is people are going to want to follow me as a leader. People are going to want to join my teams. The more likely it is I'm going to have higher quality relationships. I'm going to have clearer connection with all the people in my life. I'm going to be more present to what's right here in front of me. So it's true, we can create a lot through a world where I just live with my reactive patterns and put my head down and focus on business. I mean, did that for years. And I did it to a degree that I think created some disease in my body. Um, so the game here is, uh, yeah, I still want to win at the game I'm playing, and I want to do it at in a way that raises my vibration, and then thereby also raises the vibration of all those around me.
Yeah, 100%. There doesn't need to be an either or. And I feel like kind
Hmm.
of how you were saying, you're able to see clearly because all our emotions color what we think. And our thoughts color our emotions, and so when our emotions are clear, then probably we're going to be thinking and planning and doing our business better too. That's what I
Hmm.
imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say our emotions carry a lot of wisdom. If we can be in right relationship to feeling them and allowing them, we can gain a lot from them.
What would you tell to somebody who doesn't believe that any of this stuff will have any real impact, or think that, the people doing the qigong in the park, that's that's not, it doesn't really do anything, like they don't really believe in it, who think that it's just kind of woo woo, and maybe it's people are doing it because they believe certain things and it's not really practical? What would you tell those people?
Hmm. Well, first of all, I probably wouldn't spend too much time trying to convince anybody of something that they don't really have any interest in talking about. That doesn't ever seem to be an extremely good use of my time. But even in the way you frame the question, it seems like they're believing something about practices that are, practiced by millions of people don't have any effect. I would first ask them, aren't you just believing something yourself?
Good answer, good answer. Do you think the modern world makes spiritual awakening harder or easier, maybe? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, right. That's a good question. Um, uh, Yeah, the modern world. I mean, the modern world is changing rapidly, like as we speak. It does seem that the pace of technological change is has accelerated to a point where, AI, job loss, like maybe significant job loss is on our horizon. Um, and so I think, like, what does it even mean to be a human living on Earth is going to be a question that is going to be in everybody's mind. I know for a lot of people in my communities, it's a question that's starting to arise as we think about a future where AI could eliminate 20 or 30 or 50% of the jobs. And in that case, I think the access to spirituality in the broad sense is an interest in is going to go way up. I think that in that scenario, what we're left with is what does it mean to be human beings living together? I think there'll be like in the utopian version of that, there's going to be all kinds of time and opportunity for us to express ourselves creatively, sit in circles, sit in community, support one another in our own internal work, learning about who we are as humans, and hopefully have like universal high income, so nobody has to worry about healthcare, shelter, food, water, any of these things. Um, so I do think that the pace of change may be leading us to an opportunity for like broad spiritual awakening. Um, the other thing I'd say is, even if that's not happening, like what's going on right now, you mentioned at the beginning of our call, it's like suffering can open the door for people to become spiritually curious. And there's no shortage of us creating suffering for ourselves as humans. So one thing I'm experiencing is that there is more openness to non-denominational forms of spiritual practice. I'm a member of an organization called Sangha, which is basically an organization for people of any spiritual denomination who want to deepen their spiritual practice and want to learn from people of other faiths. So we come together, we sit in circle once a month for 4 hours. We do an annual retreat together with that small group, and really learn from one another. Uh, what does their spiritual practice look like? How do they see the world? How do our worldviews differ, and how are they similar? Because in one sense, all the spiritual paths are leading to one place: peace, love, God, equanimity, universe, whatever you want to call it. And so I am seeing that there are more openings for some of the more non-denominational, non-traditional uh, spiritual paths to be opening.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, and because of all that suffering, we need it right now, right? I mean, I don't know, the suicide rates or, all the problems in the world. It's been a problem for, seemingly has been getting worse, but I think maybe we're gonna hopefully start turning a corner on all of those mental health issues, whether that's mental health issues or poverty or all the issues that the world is facing right now.
It'll be beautiful. I do have hope that technology is going to lead us to improvements on many of those things you just mentioned.
Yeah, yeah, there's kind of a running joke I have with my friends that, with the acceleration of technology, that I'm going to start a spiritual community on Pluto. If stuff just keeps accelerating. So that's gonna be it's gonna be fun.
It'll be
Um,
chilly.
yeah, yeah, quite chilly. Yeah, so we'll have to bring some big jackets. Um, do you think that everybody can be spiritual? Do you think that it's open to everybody? For example, there's some people in like Africa maybe who are impoverished. They don't have maybe time to do spiritual practices. Do you think it's possible for everybody? Do you think that there's some way that people can fit that in?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a great question. Uh, I think we're born into the world um, kind of egoless, and in some sense, um, in the absence of ego, is that the ultimate spirituality? So my story is that we all have it in us. And then I think to your question, you're pointing to like maybe there's time, maybe there's like we need to dedicate some time to practice. I think India is an incredibly spiritual nation and has incredibly high levels of poverty. And yeah, so I think that the ability to experience like the pure love of an open-heartedness is available in every human, and whether or not every human uh, finds their way to that is another question.
100%, 100%. Yeah, and sometimes you don't even need a set amount of sometimes what we call spiritual practices like your qigong, your mindfulness are just
Hmm.
tools to get you back to that place, but aren't necessarily needed in some cases. A
Hmm.
beautiful conversation like this, or giving a gift to a friend, or something nice like that. That's just as much a spiritual practice, and something you don't need to set aside any time for. So that's kind of how I feel about the issue.
Doing the dishes.
Yeah,
Can I be present with every moment of doing the dishes?
yeah, 100%.
Can be spiritual practice.
100%. Did you ever hold any beliefs or understandings about spirituality, or I guess I don't know what you believed in before you got into qigong, before you had this awakening experience also. But did you have
Hmm.
any shifts in what you believed about spirituality as you've kind of gone on the path?
On my over the course of my life.
Yeah, over the course of your
Uh,
life, or maybe also since you had that most recent awakening.
Yeah. Uh, well, yeah, I was born into a Catholic family, went to a Catholic school for 8 years. And actually, as like a really young child, I would like pray to God to show me the edge of the universe and tell me what the fate of the human race was. So even like back when I was 9, I was like, and then I felt guilty. I had like Catholic guilt, shame because I was like, I was offered my life in exchange for that wisdom. But then I knew my parents would be sad, and so I had this whole like had to go to confession for the whole thing.
Okay.
And then I went to, so I was Catholic. And then I went to university when I was, uh, after high school, and my best friend was a Greek Orthodox. I had a girl I hung out with who was Islam, and I had a lot of Jewish friends. And I was like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on here? Like Catholicism is like no more right than any of these other denominations. So I had a big awakening moment in college, became a philosophy major and an atheist. So then I was kind of almost like evangelical atheist for a while because I was so bitter about having been duped by Catholicism,
Okay.
and then I mellowed probably in my 30s to uh, I backed off of atheism to, I guess I would call it agnostic, and just say, look, I can't know. But I'm pretty sure that like none of the individual religions that point to a specific God that is the God and the other ones are not the God, I'm pretty sure none of those are what's really going on. So I put myself in this kind of like terrestrial atheist, but like universal agnostic. And then I probably just hung out there um, until yeah, about 10 years ago when I had sort of my, sort of getting onto this more awakened path. And yeah, now I think of yeah, my spirituality is just like what's going on inside this experience of myself. I mean, in a way, um, the universe is it's like oneness, but it's not sameness. So the universe, in order to experience itself, needs to differentiate itself in ways that allow it to have an experience. So me, you are not separate, but we're differentiated aspects of the same one thing so that the one thing can have an experience of itself. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
here, I just reside in the participation of that as part of the one thing. And it sure seems separate, but it sure isn't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think the Taoists also, which is, a lot of where Qigong came from, they had like
Hmm.
many maps of like the cosmos in a way, but it was a map of like the self of the body, where they have this, I don't remember exactly what you call these maps, but it's like this they see the microcosm, us, as they see us as a microcosm, and the universe just as a macrocosm. So there's just throughout all of nature, there's that kind of that sameness that you were talking about, that differentness, but that sameness.
Hmm.
So the Taoists for sure understood that. Yeah, in my understanding.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, those maps.
Yeah, yeah, really, really interesting. There's lots of different maps. Like the the Kabbalah, the Jewish people, they have a map. The yogis have a map. The Taoists have a map. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, these all sound like maps of consciousness.
Yeah, right. Yeah, maps of consciousness, basically. Yeah, because we are energetic beings, so lots of them usually, like for example, the yogi one is of the body, the Taoist one is of the body, the Kabbalistic one seems more of like of consciousness or of the divine kind of,
Hmm.
and but we're energetic beings, so it's just mapping out that energy, that consciousness that goes all throughout the body.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a really important point. At the end of the day, it is all energy. Everything is energy. Everything is a vibration. Even as solid as it all seems, when you get down to the level that's so tiny that we're into the quantum reality of it, it makes no sense. It's like uh, there is no unification yet between what we would call Newtonian physics and quantum reality. And in quantum reality, nothing exists without an observer, and everything is particle or wave until it's observed.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like we're trying to figure this stuff out with science, but I don't know if we're going to be able to or not. I don't know if there's, I don't know if you zoom in far enough, it's like, I don't know if God is like written there. Like,
Not
yeah,
so far.
yeah. Have you ever tried psychedelics in your life?
Hmm. Yeah. I'd say at least on the one that relates most to our conversation today is ayahuasca for me. I regularly sit with ayahuasca. I'd say it's a pretty integral part of my practice.
So for people who aren't familiar with that, what is that and what is that like?
Hmm. Yeah, ayahuasca is a plant medicine that comes from South American jungles. It's often referred to as the grandmother. It's a psychedelic medicine that what I say it um, it's it can be pretty intense. It can create a lot of, I mean, there's an experience typically of there being a lot of fear as the onset of the medicine is happening, as it's kind of entering the system. Um, and it really invites you into letting go of control, which is something that all us humans are always doing all the time. We're all kind of control freaks.
I
So
imagine CEOs definitely also have a problem with that,
Mhm.
so it's probably an interesting
Yeah, it's
experience. Or
great practice. And and then so there's a whole part of the journey that's surrendering to the medicine and breathing, allowing it in the body, feeling the resistance the body has to it. But ultimately, it provides incredible and practical and profound insights into the nature of our being. Very often, there's an experience of oneness of the nature of reality, um, and and also very frequently there's incredibly practical insights about how, at least I'll speak for myself, how I want to live my life, how I am being in particular relationships. These behavioral patterns we were talking about earlier in the type of coaching uh, that we do at Conscious Leadership Group, looking for the reactive patterns so that we can see those more clearly and not engage them as much as we had in the past. Ayahuasca is like a shortcut to seeing those patterns and working through them. It works at a level of energy, and I believe that loosens up the stuck spots in the body where the energy of those old patterns can be released and transformation can occur. Uh, I find it I find it super helpful and incredibly powerful. Practical and
beautiful.
profound. Hmm.
Yeah, I would say for myself also that those are some of the most um, mind-opening experiences that you can go deep in meditation. And I hope and I think I want to believe and I think I can that one day I can get to a really, really deep place in meditation. But so far, my those psychedelic experiences really take you somewhere else that's really spiritual, really expands your mind or whatnot. It's weird.
Hmm.
It's like
Yep. I think.
it's like even after you have that experience, you still don't really understand what just happened. And when you hear this term, expand your consciousness, even now, like in
Hmm.
this moment, I don't know what that means, but I know that in that psychedelic experience, I kind of understood that a little bit better.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's like a shortcut. And it's become way more mainstream and there's a lot more access for anybody listening. I would proceed with caution, find good guide, find quality medicine. And I'm excited about the fact that it is more mainstream and that there's more access. Back to your question about, is there more or less access to spirituality these days? This is one of the ways in which I experience more.
Mm. Okay, well, do you have any closing thoughts or maybe any advice for people who are just getting into spirituality? Any final advice? And maybe you also want to plug your some social media or just talk a little bit more about your conscious leadership stuff that the coaching that you're doing.
Hmm. Um, um, what I would say about yeah, people who are curious about the spiritual path is that it's really got a large psychological component to it in my experience. Like we're all living um, through the experience of an ego, and the ego we could also call kind of our socialized self. what's the right way to be, what's not the right way to be. And so we sort of learn this socialized self way of being, and that's not our most authentic expression. And so you might find a spiritual path that has devotional practices and maybe Qigong and mindfulness and meditation. And maybe there is a religion that you like to practice. Um, there's a great book, Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, which talks about the spiritual path and how psychology relates and ego relates to it. But I would just say always know that no matter what all of these spiritual dimensions of practice you'll be engaged in, it always comes back to like, how is it living within this body mind? How is it being expressed? How are you moving through the world? Are you becoming the person that you most want to be? Do you know how to be the person you most want to become? Because ultimately, uh, that's what spirituality is about.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to plug anything? Is there any social media, or maybe I guess just go check you out at maybe there's a website for the conscious leadership that you want to share?
Uh, yeah, it's conscious.is.
Cool, cool.
That's our website. You can see some of our stuff there. We're a coaching organization. Um, and you can find us on Instagram and LinkedIn,
Awesome.
Conscious Leadership Group.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jim, for coming on. This was really fun.
Totally, Garrett. This is
Yeah.
like so fun.
So cool.
Uh,
Hey, we didn't think we'd be doing this 10 years ago when you knew me
didn't
as
see this
a,
coming when I was holding you as a baby.
yeah. Awesome. All right. And as always, Ad Astra. Namaskar.